heard something in my local bar that will stay with me for a long, long time. There's a regular who loves mountain climbing. He's pretty old now, and I guess he doesn't climb that much anymore. He's always been a pretty quiet man, but one cold winter's night, he suddenly started telling me his story. "Do you like the mountains?" he asked. "I do," I replied. "I'm more of a day tripper rather than a climber, I guess, though." "You don't go up in the mountains when the snow starts to thaw, do you?" I said that I didn't. I like snowy mountains, but I haven't ever been climbing when the snow and the ice is slippery. Seems too dangerous. "Don't ever go when it thaws," he replied. He looked as if he was deep in thought. He said that when he was younger, he and a friend went for a hike when the snow was melting. They planned on staying the night in a lodge. He carefully picked out the right clothes and boots for the trip. The melting snow was going to make the climb harder, and precautions were necessary. You need good eye protection and a hat, because when the sun rises over you, it can burn and blind you. But since it was still cold and not yet spring, the biting cold can come back in the blink of an eye. The wind is just as harsh out there in the elements. He said that luckily the weather wasn't as bad as he thought it might have been. He and his friend were in good spirits, and the pair were making good time with their climb. They saw a group of people up ahead. The group was descending as they were ascending the mountain. When they drew closer, they offered a little greeting their way. There were 5 of them, and not one of them said a word. They didn't reply or even acknowledge the greeting. Well, they thought that was kind of rude since they literally walked straight past them. He noticed something about the clothing that the group was wearing. Some were dressed for warmer temperatures, and the others were dressed for colder temperatures. Some were wearing t-shirts and shorts, and others were wearing thick winter coats. He spoke with his friend and determined that because it was partly sunny and still cold, the clothing didn't seem that unusual. They carried on climbing until they reached the lodge. They went to check in, and the clerk said to them, "Oh, great. You know what? You'll have the run of the place to yourselves. There's no other bookings, and there aren't any other climbers today. Pretty lucky, huh?" The pair of them stood there, puzzled, because they'd just seen a group of people. They asked, "Does that mean that there are no other climbers, and there won't be any other climbers today?" "Well, yes. According to the owner of this lodge, the mountain's wide open. No one's here except us," the clerk replied. Well, they couldn't get their heads around that, because they'd just seen that group of 5. They spoke to the owner of the lodge a little later on in the day. They explained to him that they had seen a mixed group of hikers descending the mountain. The owner of the lodge looked visibly shaken by their story. He looked disturbed, yet not unfamiliar with the idea. He said that over the course of a year, there had been 5 fatalities due to either severe weather or injuries. He then said the following: "When the snow begins to thaw, that's when the victims make their way back home." So what my friend at the bar thinks he witnessed that day was something paranormal. Those 5 silent people who seemingly didn't acknowledge him and his friend, dressed in different clothing for different seasons. They could have been apparitions. That story creeped me out, so I wanted to share it. For me, there's always something mysterious about the mountains. This is a very strange and mysterious experience that I still don't have an answer for. It all started one morning when I was on the way to college. I was in a bit of a daze waiting for the traffic light to change so that I could cross the road when suddenly a man appeared next to me and asked,
"Are you my mom?"
Well, at the time, I was a 20-year-old college student and I didn't have any children. The man looked to me as if he was in his early 30s. Clearly, I wasn't his mom. It didn't make sense. Naturally, I was pretty surprised by his question. With a little laugh, I replied, "I think you've got the wrong person." When he heard my answer, he kind of screwed his face up. It was as if he had been given some bad news, or he didn't believe what I had just said. His expression almost said, "Why are you lying?" I didn't like it. So the second the light turned green, I power walked away from him. Sorry if it's a little rude to say this, but I think he might have not been all there, you know. He could have been a few sandwiches short of a picnic. He was very skinny and wide-eyed. It looked as if he had been wearing the same shirt for days. It was only partially buttoned up. He had a rucksack over one shoulder, too. I'm pretty sure he wasn't homeless, though. Just a little odd. This was my first encounter with him, but I've seen him countless times over the years. He would wait for me every day by the traffic light.
"Are you my mom?"
He'd ask. "No, I'm not," I'd reply. That's all he ever said. It was creepy, but I didn't feel like I needed to get the police involved. But then he started showing up in other places. He used to come to campus just to look for me. One day, it all got a bit too much for me. I was really stressed out with my studies and so sick of this weird guy following me around and asking that dumb question, so I yelled at him. I think I said something along the lines of,
"Don't come back again, you creep!"
I guess said is putting it mildly. I think screamed might be more accurate. After that, I didn't see him again. A year later, I graduated and went back to living at my parents' house while I was looking for work. One night, I got a call from a friend who was still living near my college. She said that she saw my friend, and I knew she meant him. She said that even though a year had passed, he spoke to her and asked about me.
"Where's my mom gone?"
He asked. She said he scared her, so she ran away. When she told me that, I didn't pay much attention to it. I just thought, oh, I remember that guy, and not much more. I didn't live there anymore, so I didn't care that much. But when I found a wilted carnation flower on my doorstep that year's Mother's Day, I started to get scared again. I instantly thought, it's him. After speaking about it with my dad, I went to the police. It was getting to be a little too much for me. The police said that there's no specific crime against leaving a flower on a doorstep. Also, I couldn't prove that it was him that had done it, and I wouldn't be able to give the police his name. I knew nothing about the guy. I wasn't happy with the outcome, but I understood it. But I couldn't help but feel anxious after that for a while. Several months went by, and the nights drew in, and the air grew colder. One snowy winter's night, I was taking a walk. I was walking the sidewalks of my city with no real plan in place. It was cold, but very scenic. I trotted carefully as there was a lot of ice and snow on the streets. Then, something happened. Something that would change my life forever. I heard the screech of tires. I turned to see a car skidding and colliding with other parked vehicles. I saw a pileup unfold in front of my eyes. I saw the unavoidable. A car came skidding towards me, and it was too late for me to get out of its way. I awoke after an unknown period of time, and I found myself wedged underneath a fallen tree and close to a car on its side. I hurt everywhere, and I couldn't move a muscle. I was likely in shock, too. My back felt as if it were frozen to the floor. I just felt like a dead weight. Pain pulsed through my body to the rhythm of my heartbeat. I felt so hurt and so helpless. Then, the car next to me went up in flames. I struggled against the weight of the tree, but it was no good. I was too hurt and too weak. I felt that it was the end for me. It was a terrifying realization. I heard a voice. I heard it as clear as a bell.
Mom! Mom!
The voice was calling. I heard that man's voice. Without a thought, I screamed back at him.
Help me! I'm here! I'm here!
He was covered in blood. It looked like he was involved in the same accident that I was. He heaved the falling tree off of my body and dragged me away from the flaming car. I watched as he dragged me through snow in amazement. I was wrestling internally with the rage of feelings and emotions. I was hurt, shocked, relieved, frightened, you name it. My injuries didn't look half as bad as his. I don't know how he was still moving. Maybe the adrenaline was keeping him going, or maybe it was his desire to rescue me. Who knows? Once we were a decent distance away from the wreckage, he looked at me, smiled, and then asked,
Are you my mom?
I felt an indescribable feeling in that moment. Words couldn't ever do it justice. Without thought, I heard myself respond, Yes. I nodded slightly, and then I burst into tears. I cried more than I've ever cried in my life. I was positively wailing. I wiped my eyes clean. It took longer than normal because I was hurting. And when I looked up again, he was gone. In what felt like a split second, he was gone. I was alone, lying on the snow, with the strangest feeling deep in my heart. I haven't seen him in years. I don't know what he was, but I don't think he was a ghost or anything paranormal. He was as real as you or I. Sometimes, when it snows, I think about that time and I think about him. Memories of an unknown son. I hope he's doing okay, wherever he is. I am sad I never got to thank him.